I'm Diane in Hong Kong, and you're watching ViuTV News. Coming up on tonight's show. Lawyers of disgraced former Chief Secretary Raphael Hui say money he took before taking office not a crime. On visit to Macau, State Leader Zhang Dejiang praises the city for enacting national security laws. And South Koreans vote in the first presidential election since leader Park Geun-hye was ousted. Good evening. On day 2 of his Macau visit, State Leader Zhang Dejiang praised the Special Administrative Region for putting national security as its top priority. His comments came during a forum this morning. In his address, Zhang said Hong Kong and Macau get the chance to benefit from the mainland economy's growth, while many countries are queuing up to do the same. He hopes the cities will make the most out of the Belt and Road Initiative and the development of the Big Bay Area. Zhang praised Macau for implementing national security laws.
President Xi Jinping has already said that Macau has set a good example in putting national security in its top priority by being the first to implement Article 23 of the Basic Law. This is Beijing's acknowledgement of the enclave's government and its people.
The state leader also visited Macau's legislature, where he pressed lawmakers not to filibuster or engage in violence, a message some believe could be directed at Hong Kong.
Filibustering and violence simply don't happen in our legislature. So maybe Zhang Dejiang is sending a message to another region.
Moving on to other stories, the Court of Final Appeal has begun hearing the appeal case involving former Chief Secretary Raphael Hui. Hui was jailed for 7.5 years for accepting bribes and misconduct in office. His co-defendants, former Sanong staff member Thomas Chan and ex-stock exchange official Francis Kwan, also showed up today. They were followed by former Sanong Properties joint chairman Thomas Kwok, who was slapped with a 5-year jail term but has been granted bail for the appeal. Hui and Kwok's lawyers argued that the ex-official did not give Sanong special treatment even after taking money from the property developer. Chief Justice Jeffrey Ma disagreed. The hearing continues tomorrow. And elsewhere in the region, South Koreans are voting to elect a new leader, looking to move on from a corruption scandal that brought down former President Park Geun-hye and shook the political and business elite to the core. Samantha Vardas reports.
Decision day in South Korea. Voters heading to the polls on Tuesday to elect a new leader, ending months of political vacuum. Liberal candidate Moon Jae-in cast his ballot in Seoul, the firm favourite for the top job, urging South Koreans to have their say.
I feel that not only my party and myself, but also the people have been more desperate for a change of government. I appreciate the people for being with us.
Unless there's a major upset, Moon will be elected president. A decisive win by him will provide much-needed stability in South Korea and could usher in a new era of relations when it comes to the north, with a possible return to the so-called sunshine policy of greater cooperation between Seoul and Pyongyang. Moon's closest challenger, Ahn Cheol-soo, cast his vote earlier in the morning, as did fellow candidate Hong Joon-pyo, an outspoken former prosecutor pushing a harder line on North Korea. The new leader will be announced on Wednesday and will be sworn in immediately with no transition period. Their first job will be to quickly name a prime minister.
For more details on the election in South Korea, here's Joseph Kim in Seoul.
It's a historic presidential election here in South Korea, with many voters heading to the polls to fill the leadership void that's been left vacant for months following the impeachment of the previous president. That President Park Geun-hye was removed from office after being charged with breaking the Constitution in a corruption scandal that rocked the nation. With that, the country is seeing the largest number of eligible voters in any election in its history, and it's expected that the voter turnout will be the highest on record, many with different hopes and dreams for the country.
Rather than personal gain and those around them, I hope the new president is just and takes care of the people.
I voted for my children's future because our current situation is so unstable.
But after the elections, there's a tough road ahead. The new president will be president-elect for the shortest period in the country's history, being inaugurated shortly after being confirmed. Facing a long list and no transition period, South Korea's new leader will be immediately briefed on the military situation amid heightening tensions with North Korea and be expected to revitalize the slowing economy while also addressing the deep-rooted corruption that ousted the previous president and pushed forward the snap elections in the first place.
Well, this key leadership election in South Korea comes at a time of heightened tension with its neighbors in the north. In the latest rhetoric out of Pyongyang, it accused the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency and South Koreans' intelligence of plotting an attack on its supreme leadership with biochemical weapons. Footage released by North Korean state media show Pyongyang residents denouncing what the government called state-sponsored terrorism. The accusation comes after the hermit nation allegedly detained a fourth U.S. citizen on suspicion of hostile acts against the regime.
I feel indignation at the U.S. imperialists and the South Korean puppets. America's dangerous behavior has got to the point where it could launch a biochemical attack against our supreme leadership. How can we bear this?
We cannot bear this anymore. We have to wipe out all those villains involved in this recent hideous terrorist plot.
Elsewhere, Jakarta's Christian governor has been sentenced to 2 years in jail for blasphemy against Islam, a harsher than expected ruling in a trial that was seen as a test of religious tolerance in Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim-majority nation. Sam Vadas again.
2 years behind bars for Jakarta's Christian governor. That's the verdict from an Indonesian court on Tuesday in a trial seen as a test for the country's religious tolerance. Basuki Tjahjanurnama, known as Ahok, was accused of insulting the Quran, and for months Islamist groups have been calling for him to be jailed. Many hardliners gathering outside the court on Tuesday as the judge found Ahok guilty of blasphemy against their religion.
2 years is very lenient in my opinion, compared to the pain and sacrifices made by Muslims, including the nation that was almost wrecked by the crimes of Ahok, the blasphemer.
Prosecutors had previously called for a suspended 1-year jail term. The 2-year sentence coming as a shock to many of his supporters who wept outside the court.
The law is blind. It can no longer tell between right and wrong. Ahok has sacrificed being governor, and we accepted that. Now he's innocent, yet accused of blasphemy. We are disappointed with the law in Indonesia.
Human rights activists say the guilty verdict is bad news for Indonesian minorities, saying if a governor can be jailed on what many call groundless accusations, what chances do others have? Ahok lost his re-election bid for the city's top job last month to a Muslim rival. Analysts say radical Islamic groups had a decisive impact on the outcome.
And up next, the latest from the world of business. And let's kick things off with local stock market action. The benchmark Hang Seng added about 1.3% to close at 24,889 points. The market opened modestly higher but surged in the afternoon session thanks to gains in the tech sector. News China plans to create a trio of energy giants through mergers of 8 companies. Saw China Resources Land get a big boost as shares in the company rallied around 5.5%. Well, a relentless rise in U.S. crude output and slowing global demand has kept pressure on crude oil markets, but Saudi Arabia's energy minister says the worst is over. Speaking at an oil and gas conference in Malaysia, Khalid Al-Fali added markets are rebalancing, but he still expects OPEC to extend output cuts till the end of 2017. Bloated global inventory saw black gold prices slip back below $50 per barrel, pressuring OPEC to extend cuts for the rest of the year. Bank of Japan Governor Haruhiko Kuroda says he expects to meet the central bank's 2% inflation target around next fiscal year. That's if the BOJ continues with its current monetary easing. He added that it would adjust policy if needed, but that the central bank recently upgraded Japan's economic outlook and the global economy was growing stronger. Trouble between Toshiba Corp and its semiconductor business partner Western Digital. The Japanese firm told Western Digital not to interfere in the sale of its prize chip unit. Western Digital says Toshiba is violating their contract by transferring their joint venture's rights. Toshiba has called out Western Digital for deliberately interfering in its potential economic advantage. Western Digital is also a bidder for the chip unit. And staying on M&A activity, this one could be a match made in fashion market heaven, some analysts say, as handbag maker Coach eyes millennials with its planned purchase of Kate Spade. Fred Katayama reports.
Handbag maker Coach is shelling out $2.4 billion to buy its smaller rival, Kate Spade. With the purchase, Coach hopes to tap into a lucrative market, millennials, who love Kate Spade's quirky satchels and totes. Shares of both companies surged on the news. Laura Champagne, managing director at Row Equity Research, says at $24 billion, Coach got a bargain.
Coach's skill set is actually very well suited for Kate, meaning it gives them scale. They have many of the same landlords, the same type of supply chain, the same type of raw materials, even the geographies where they're well known, North America.